Good morning, friends. This will be the second time. Hannah did the first forum using this new system, and there were some things that we learned. One is, for forum, it's going to be more like a meeting. So if you would just sit on this side, if you see the camera, part of the reason for that, I'm sorry, if you see the TV, the camera's up there. And so, yeah, up on the wall, see it? So the thing is, if the TV is away from that, or we're talking to somebody on the screen that you're not looking at, it gives a feeling of dissociation, and there was some of that last week. So remember that there's Erica is online. We only have one, but remember when we're doing this, there are people online. So anyway, we're going to talk about the new system. That's what we're going to talk about today. It's a change. It's a change meeting. So we're going to need to adapt a little bit and figure things out. We've done a number of tests. We did some testing Friday. And we kind of found this configuration works pretty well for us, and I'll explain that in a minute. That may change. So back in February, the meeting approved the installation of this system. And this system has three main components. I'm going to dive right in. Actually, I'm going to back up for just a second. In my previous life, I was in a very technical role, and I did do some training, and things can get very dry. So, that said, talk about how you feel about the system, what you think, how it'll affect worship. Are there suggestions of ways that we can incorporate this new system into our community and use it to the best? That's really what I'm saying. So think about that. Let me pass these around. I just have three of them. And there's one that James is going to put up on the screen for you, Erica. And those of you that don't have it, will be able to see it here on the screen. The one that's the overview and operation. I also wrote procedures in a previous life, so this is our procedure. So anyway, first off, there's three parts to this system. There's a lift system, there's a listen system, and then there's the part that ties into Zoom. There's three different systems, and they kind of use things interdependently. So all three can use the microphone. Two of them can use the speakers. So it kind of varies. So I want to go through them one by one. The first is the lift system, and we were actually earlier in the meeting house, we were talking about the fact that James could be heard on this side of the room a little bit easier, and James could hear us on that side. And that's because of the lift system that's in here. That's because of the microphones and the speakers. If I'm standing over here, in fact, let me demonstrate. I said I wasn't going to move around much, but let me just demonstrate here a little bit. You should be able to hear me a little better behind you. Those speakers right now are transmitting my voice. Not much, but a little bit. That's why it's called lift system. We'll talk about that. And one thing on the lift system, if you expected it to be like you were on stage in front of a microphone, that's not what it is. It can't work that way in this kind of room with speakers and microphones. So because of feedback. But that's the first system. That system is so easy to operate. In fact, James is going to mute it right now, and he doesn't even know how. To the right of the box, outside the black box on the wall, right there, is the wall-mounted volume control. Now, if you tap anywhere on that screen, just tap the screen, you'll see buttons. See the red and the green? Yeah. All right, mute us. Mute. And a red light comes on. Now all the microphones, it's hard for me to hear the difference. You may be able to hear the difference, but I just muted the speakers. That volume control system controls speaker volume. It doesn't control output volume. It controls what's coming out of the speakers. And it controls Zoom.
And then control the volume, the input volume on the microphones. It does not.
It controls
the speakers.
It controls the speaker volume. Speaker volume.
So Erica can still hear us right now?
Yes, yes. This has no impact on the Zoom output or the output from the microphones for that matter. It's just think of it, it's affecting the speakers. So turn it back on there by green. Notice the red light came on when you muted. Hit the green. Oh, now it's on. Now the green light will go off eventually, but you can also kind of tap another button to the left somewhere and the green light will go off. Just tap a button, one of those volumes, that should go off. The buttons on the left control the microphones to the speakers. So generally that's pretty much all the way up. So tap those the up button. There you go.
Yep, all the way up.
All the way up. The knob, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but the knob is controlling Erica's volume through the speakers. Right. We have no control over the output to Zoom. You'll control that if you're on Zoom at your computer.
The output to Zoom or the output from Zoom?
From Zoom.
Talking about muting Erica's voice?
Anything you do from that station is affecting the speakers.
Okay.
It's only affecting the speakers in the room.
Okay. Not the microphone gain or anything.
Well, I guess you could say it's affecting the microphone gain to the speakers, but it's affecting speaker volume. It has no impact on the output to Zoom.
Okay, kind of whatever way it does it.
Right. Speakers, that's speakers. So walking in the room and you want to start the lift system up, all you have to do is walk over and hit the unmute, the green button. You'll see the green light come on, and then you'll raise the other buttons on the left. You'll raise the volumes to the speakers from the mics, and success. You just turned on the new system.
And if the Zoom person coming into the room is too low, you can do the knob to raise the volume to us.
Right.
So
The knob is the
So
volume
the
knob is
from
where?
Zoom. Just right below that.
okay.
Oh.
All
Okay,
right
thank
there.
you.
Go ahead,
So
Terry.
the audio from Zoom is going through the system speaker.
That's correct.
And it's
Yeah, Eric.
coming directly, not through the microphones.
It's coming direct. That's
Do you want me to talk?
Yes, thank you, Erica. And James, could you turn Erica all the way up using the knob, please?
Okay.
Now,
It's nice to be with you today.
All right.
Nice to see you.
So how is it that we're able to turn Erica up without turning the mics up? The knob that James is turning affects what?
it affects the sound from the computer. Zoom
The computer
affects
audio.
the sound from the computer to the speakers.
Okay, so it's basically just a computer volume.
You could think of it that way, yes. I mean, we don't use that computer for much other than Zoom. If you use it for YouTube or something, it also
The
affects.
computer, I'm sorry to be sticky about this, but I'm trying to understand it. The computer audio is playing into the speakers, right?
No,
There's an intermediary there.
yes.
Okay, I'll check back with you.
All right. No, those are good questions, and the more we understand, the better off we're going to be, Terry. So let me get back to script here. Let's see. Second system. So we talked about lift. We're not talking Zoom yet. We're not talking Zoom yet. We're talking lift, and now we're going to talk listen. Listen. This is interesting to me because when I this is the assistive listening system, and James, if you don't mind, on the screen, if you could scroll down, there's a picture of the box where you're standing. It's much less neat than it is today. There you go, that one right there. So this is hard to see on the screen, but this right here is the listen system. It has that little screen. And what that is it transmits the audio that's coming out to these little boxes that I'm supposed to have 3 or 4 of, and I've misplaced them, and Tobin has one. It transmits them to these boxes. And let's back up. This system is the type of system that is required by the American Disabilities Act for facilities whose primary function is audible, and they have 50 people required by the ADA. So we now have it, and we have 4. If I can find the 4th one, I've misplaced one. And that's the required number if you have 50 up to 250. This system right here can give you sound in 2 different ways. First off, it can use an earbud or your own microphones. The only thing about earbuds, it can't have 3 little black lines on it, which is one that has a microphone. So it has to be like a music earbuds type of thing. And it's pretty straightforward. You plug it in. This one I've used, and I do have some brand new clean ones because I like people to try it. It's got a button on the top you turn on, and a little light comes on. Put it in your ear. Then you have an up-down button on the front. I'm already starting to hear myself talk. So what it's doing is it's picking up the sound from these microphones. It's running it through the processor, and it's sending it out that listen system on a low radio frequency that's picked up by these receivers. And it is always, and let's back up, the lift system and the listen system are always using the new mics. They're always using the new mics. They can't change. They're always going to use the new mics, those 2 systems. Zoom's different. We'll talk about that. There's another way that this can be used, and Tobin's demonstrating it right now. The system has, that you can purchase lanyards. I purchased this one so we could test it. These devices are like $100. The lanyard is like $70. But what that does in that configuration, it'll allow Tobin to put it over his neck, and he's already been to his audiologist, and his hearing aids have been programmed to utilize T-coils, which are built in. And so this device now transmits directly to his hearing aids. And have you got it turned on to where you can?
Yeah, and then you can adjust the volume.
So while we're kind of, this is like 2nd grade when you pass something around and then it distracts everybody. So I'm going to pass these around, and I'll tell you what, I'm going to pass this whole box around. And if you want to try some brand new earbuds in here, put them on and try them. I will give you one other peek on the earbuds. Because of the lift system and the listen system always using microphones, one of the things we have to be very, very careful of in the meeting house is live microphones and live speakers other than the ones that are built in, because you will develop feedback. These things are speakers. So if you have your volume turned all the way up on this and you remove it from your ear, this thing, you may hear it a little bit, it'll start to create feedback in this room. We're going to talk about feedback, how to stop that. So I'm going to stop for just a moment. I've been yammering for quite a bit. Let me see if there's questions that you have. Howard, yes?
So there's no limit on the number of those devices you can get?
Good question. Howard asked if there's a limit on the number you have. I think there is, but it's up like 18 or 20, something like that. But I can find that out. That's a good question.
So you're saying that up to this point, we were technically out of ADA compliance all the years?
I don't want to say that, but I think, again, my read of it, when it says affected facilities with 50 or more are required to have an assistive listening system. And if you're between 50 and 250, you have to have 4 of these devices. And then I went, what is an affected facility? What falls under it? And it talks about any facility that the main purpose is listening, is using your ears. And that's kind of hard to, it may not be necessarily human ears we're listening to all the time, but we do listen to meetings. So.
And then also, you mentioned the little plug that goes in, shouldn't have 3 bands on it, but it can have 1 or it can have 2.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. What those are, the first band is going to be the sound coming to this. The second band, which is close to that, is the sound coming to the other ear. The third band is usually a vocal. That's the voice.
You don't want that. No.
That's right. And it's not even that you don't want it. It seems to disable these devices, so you can't have one that has 3. That's what I found. I may be wrong. That's what I found. What other? Yes, Toby?
Also, these serve increase the volume. It does sound a little tinny, a little thin, but it articulates it better than the muffled sound that I usually hear if I don't have one. So and you have to adjust it. If you're using this lanyard device, what I have found is, at least with my hearing aids on the T-coil program, it helps if the little, harder to see, but the little device on the side of the lanyard, if that is up closer to my hearing aid, it comes through clear, so I can tuck it in my shirt, and it keeps it up there where it's close by. Because distance makes a difference in whether it transmits to the hearing aid. And you can also plug in an earbuds to the hearing aid device. So somebody sitting next to you can use earbuds from this one single device at the same time as you're using it, if you're using it for your hearing aid. So.
Yes, and that's a great point. You can do this. You can have 2 people can use one device also without the lanyard.
Right.
2, so if you're sitting next to somebody, you can actually have 2 earbuds in.
They do have to agree on the level of volume, however, so it has to be friendly.
Yeah, because I have hearing aids, I can't use earbuds unless I take my hearing aids out, or I use the type that is flat over your ear. So is there any problem with the types that are flat and don't fit into the ear?
We haven't tested that, Terry, so I would suggest you bring one.
And we can try,
Exactly.
taking the.
It's a great point. It's a great point that Terry makes too, because if you're using one of these and you've got it here and you say, gosh, I think I can hear, and you pull it out, you've now exposed this tiny little speaker, and trust me, it'll make a difference. It won't wail loud, but you'll start to hear some feedback. So if you do want to take it out, turn the volume down or unplug it. That's all you need to do, and then take this little speaker out of the picture. So same with Terry, for example, my point is if you're using one of these, be aware that you're a potential source of feedback. Be aware if you're a potential source of feedback.
The question really is whether these type of headphones will contain the sound that's coming at me well enough to not cause any interference.
Give it a whirl.
Right, we have a question from the Sally on Zoom.
Yes.
Sally asks, can't hear what it always uses that Zoom doesn't. Not the system, but the drop board. These mics maybe can I play piano on Zoom to accompany him singing and type the sound okay. Hearing that the system can be input recorded music or video soundtrack if we show a film or question mark.
Let's see, a lot of questions in there. Let's see, so starting, can't hear what it always uses that Zoom doesn't. Let's see, so again, 3 systems, listen, lift, and I'm calling it Zoom. The first 2 systems, listen and lift, are always using these microphones. In Zoom, I have the option, and right now I'm using the Bluetooth mic. We're not using these on Zoom. And that's based on the testing that we've done, that we found that in a small group where there's conversational, there's discussion, people maybe moving around a little bit, this seems to work better. We'll test it some more, but that's why. So hopefully that answers, and I can switch to the other, which I will do in a bit, but I'm not going to do it yet, because I can in Zoom select either or. Let's see, hold on one second. You asked another question. You asked about playing the piano on Zoom and accompanying him singing here. The answer to that is I can tell you as a musician who has used online during the pandemic, that will not work. And that's nothing to do with this system. That has to do with the fact that there's latency built into the internet. The speed of light is only so fast, and it does make a 20 millisecond difference, which makes, you can't play music over online that well. So that won't work too well. Let's see. Very impressive system. So can we input, record? Oh, you asked about YouTube. That's a great question because it comes up movie night as an example. Are we going to be able, for example, if we had a screen size and then use these speakers? And I believe the answer to that is yes, but I haven't fully tested that. So, Sally, does that answer your questions? Okay. Any other questions? Thank you for pointing that out, James, too. Be sure, because this is another thing I noticed in forum, too. It becomes very easy to forget there's people online that are part of the forum, so it does help. All right, let's see. I've almost got to the end of page 1. Yay. All right, so very quickly, components. There's 16 microphones in here. The ones on the outer look different than the ones on the inner. The outer ones, they're called cardioid, which bottom line means if you picture that mic and think in terms of 360 degrees, it's got a pattern something like this that's picking up beneath it. So that mic is probably not picking me up very much. These mics are supercardioid, and all that means is that cone is quite a bit tighter, so that's why they're kind of pointed right here at the first row. 16 mics. So there's mics. There's a pan and tilt zoom camera over there. And I actually have some control of that. Let's see, James, could you unshare screen for just a moment, please? Yeah, so if you watch where we're sitting, we kind of picked, it's a little persnickety because it's got to be close enough. Oh, there we go. So there we go. Now it's coming back around. Woo. I think we decided that was worship view. Is that right, Howard? Yeah, there's a couple different things, and there's a couple different, you can preset the camera. That's the big deal. It's not a big deal, but we can pan and tilt and zoom the camera. You got to be a little closer than I am, but I can move it a little bit every so often. That's a bad picture. There we go. I think we decided that was the picture for worship.
It's not a worship. There, now it's going to be worship.
There we go.
Awesome.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you preset it to pan automatically, very slowly or very intermittently? I went to a Zoom meeting at Homewood meeting in Baltimore, and their camera panned across the whole meeting every now and then so you can see everyone.
Yeah. So in other words, it zoomed in and then panned around. We have some limitations for this camera. It can do more than we're able to because of the Mac computer that we're using. So our only control is with the control. And so we've actually talked about a different computer, and that would be a different decision. But if we had a PC over there, it actually, you can control it and put in program functions. It may be able to do what you're
I go for that.
right.
Yeah, it was very nice.
So some of
I could actually see that.
Right. But right now, I can tell you the answer is no, because I can't program it. This is the only thing I can control.
Yeah, so someone had
Yeah, that's a switch usually when extra functionality, people tell you, oh, you have to have a Mac. It's almost refreshing to hear the opposite.
let's see, the other thing that I want to tell you, and Erica can testify to this, and Sally can both testify to this, because they're listening again, well, actually, they're listening to the Bluetooth.
You want me to switch the microphone?
Yeah, let's go ahead and switch. You know how to do that?
Maybe you can figure it out.
Yeah, let's see, James has got the,
Select microphone.
it's good.
Select,
There you
go. Forte?
That's correct.
Okay.
There's one other step, James, now in the upper left, turn on the original sound.
Okay, upper left.
Yeah, just click that right there. There you go. All right. I didn't hook myself up Bluetooth, but sound probably just changed. See, nod your head, Erica, if it changed. Hold on just a second. Erica, did sound change for you?
It's pretty much the same. I am noticing that because of the direction of the camera that everything seems very washed out because it's so bright out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the light coming through.
Right. Right. Good. So let me ask again on the sound. It's really the sound that I'm interested in.
The sound is very similar. I'm not hearing a lot of major difference between the two.
How is the sound quality in general?
Oh, it's very good. It's
Very
fine.
good. Oh, good.
So a couple things now that, in fact, I'm starting to hear a little bit of feedback in there. So why don't you, James, if you don't mind, the wall-mounted volume control using the virtual buttons on the left side, you're just going to drop the volume just a little bit, and that should help with any feedback that we get. So that was actually good to hear that and see that too. If you get feedback, just turn that volume down. Let's see. We were talking about, and I got distracted.
You were recapping the lift and listen. And
Oh,
you're gonna.
yes, thank you. So really the point, what I'm trying to make is right now, if Howard was over here tapping like that, he's going to be a major distraction to Erica because this whole room is now mic'd.
What if I was over here tapping?
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
No, keep tapping, keep tapping.
Fun enough,
Can
but you
you
can't.
hear that, Eric? I'll bet you now with Terry talking, Howard talking, me talking, all at the same time.
Yes. Yes, there's lots of cacophony.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we need to be, this mode right here is not very, our initial testing, it's a little bit concerning for forum and for meetings. This seems to be more focused. During worship, just remember, if you're sitting over there and you're tapping your finger, you're transmitting that out to Zoom. And it doesn't only do that, because let me get into a little bit of technical stuff on this system. This system is pretty complex. It is listening for which microphones right now are getting input. So it knows that that microphone is giving the majority of the input. So it's going to focus on that. If there's another noise going on in the room, the system is trying to figure out where is it coming from, and it starts to make it very garbled. In fact, Erica, I'm going to walk around. I'm going to keep talking as I'm walking around, and it's not going to sound any different to the people that are in the room. But you'll be able to, if you can see me, you'll be able to see as I stop, it becomes a lot clearer. But if I'm moving, traveling about the room and I'm talking and I'm expecting you to understand everything that I'm saying, you're probably having a hard time understanding it until I come to a stop.
Well, I can hear you. You have a good projective voice, but it does fade in and out. It gets less strong. But if someone was walking and was speaking with a lower tone, it probably would be more garbled. You were a very good speaker.
Well, thank you very much. Howard.
So I'm sitting over here. I was just thinking, just to, put the thing through its paces and try to, see how good or bad it could be. If, what if I'm standing here and I'm going to try this, if you don't mind. I'm just going to kind of mumble at a lower, speak at a lower voice and, just kind of talk like this.
I can still hear you.
You can hear me right now. It's great. It means I'm just kind of,
Now I'm not, I can hear mumble.
I'm just kind of blathering on in a low tone of voice, which sometimes that is what happens when people get messages. They just
Mumbling.
speak up.
We encourage people to rise to ministry
Yeah, that's right.
and speak to the group. Well, typically, when I'm in ministry, I'm talking to this side,
Yeah.
I'm talking to the center, I'm talking to the left. Habitually, I've developed this for, when I'm doing ministry, that's the way I do it. So how did that sound, Erica?
That sounded fine. That was clear throughout.
So we need to encourage people to use these same practices about vocal ministry as we would as though we didn't have a sound system.
Yeah, great point. And I just know there are a lot of people who, when they give vocal ministry, don't always observe those practices.
So we really need to encourage it.
Yeah. And so right now, Erica,
Worship in ministry, are you listening?
So right now, Erica, at that level, I'm speaking at my normal level of voice. I was kind of lowering my voice purposely before. How's that? And I'm not standing at the moment.
I can hear you clearly from as long as you're speaking up, even though you're not standing.
Yeah.
Say it again, Howard. Speak softly. Not as softly as you did the first time.
So I'm just going to talk like this, just conversationally, like I was talking to the person next to me. It doesn't.
I'm having to strain.
Okay, yeah. I would expect that. It doesn't pick it up very well. Now I've raised my voice just a little bit. I'll do like I would normally do, which is like Terry does. I'm going to stand and speak, more. Try to enunciate and speak a little, project my voice a little bit. I think that's okay, right?
That's perfect. Yeah, that's fine.
I used to tell people when you minister, raise your eyes and your voice to heaven. And now I can say, raise your eyes and voice to the microphones above you.
I have a quick question about this. So you turned off that mic in order to test this just now?
No.
What is that?
Let's get to Zoom. Let me get to Zoom, because this is part of the Zoom. So I went through the volume control, and it's a great question, but I think I'm right there. We went through the volume control, all of that. So before we get to the Zoom part, there's a couple other things over there. So there's a light switch to the left, actually to the right of the door, way to your left, James, towards the door. Yeah, you see it's now covered. And I actually have a little sign next to it that says if you turn this off, you're going to turn the power off to everything in that box and everything. So that's how we're wired up. That's not necessarily.
You can still turn it on.
Yeah, you can't disrupt everything.
Yeah, okay, so we
You
want to
can,
do that.
and you can also turn on the light because I added a chain to the light. Yes, to the reading table, so the light still works. We did get an electrician to come in and kind of work on that. That was not part of this deal. There are some monitors in there too, some little tiny like computer monitors. For our purposes, we really don't need them. You can turn them on. The left monitor will display effectively the screen. Yep. And there's a button that you can turn it on, but to me it's not. Yeah, turn it on.
So what's that monitor displaying?
It'll replicate the computer. It will show it'll eventually, it should show the computer. Yeah.
I'm seeing Zoom all day now.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And it's there, there are, there are occasions and applications where that could be used, but I don't see the need for that. So
You
we're
didn't
gonna,
have a monitor on the table.
what's that?
If you had a little computer and you didn't have a monitor on the table, but you needed to see it for control once in a while,
Right.
that would be.
Yeah.
That would be.
I don't know if we're going to get to this, but as everyone will recall, a week ago, very, very coincidentally, we lost power to this building in the middle or toward the end of worship, and there was that beeping coming up. Are you going to
Yes.
talk about that?
Yes, absolutely. I have learned how to deal with that beeping.
So that was just truly coincidental, that didn't have to do with us overloading the circuits with the new.
Well, we don't, well, I can tell you it had nothing to do with that system, because it didn't ever trip that breaker. I don't think we know.
It was up at the pole.
Well, that's reassuring.
Transformer went bad.
Crazy, somebody running into a hole.
Well, it was just from the pole to our building, so there was some problem with the transformer.
One other background piece that we found, and it may be different, because we may, even though we lost power last week, Terry, we did get enough recording on the forum to where Terry was able to provide that to me, and I got it to Tech Savvy, our company, and he was able to make some improvements in the background sound based on that recording. But one thing we learned very early on is with this system on, those doors really should be closed. It makes a big difference on what gets transmitted out if those doors are not closed.
The long debate we had about whether to keep the doors open or not.
Well,
It makes a huge difference to the sound in the room, a huge difference.
it does make a difference.
30%.
If your ears are already. Yeah, if your ears are attuned to it, I can absolutely hear the difference. I promise you that, well, at least in the testing we did initially, it was a major difference. And even in our spec that we got, the bid that we got, they said, this is a tough room to fix up what you're trying to do, but it sure will help if you close your doors.
Absolutely.
So anyway, let's go ahead and close them back. Eric, I don't know if you can tell the difference.
While we're doing that, the camera is still set to Richard.
I'm hearing a lot of the door opening and closing.
It's done now.
There we go. That should be refocusing. Yeah. That's still not form mode, is it? No. I may have lost the form.
It gave a little blip one time.
There's some Zoom settings that could help video.
Well,
in this
and
situation.
let's talk about Zoom now. Let's move to Zoom. I think that's it. Let's see if I can do this. I'm not going to spend any other time here on the forum thing, if you don't mind. Y'all mind? I'm way back here. But let's move on to the Zoom piece. Yeah, so the third function is the Zoom piece. And that was in the spec that we wanted it to tie into Zoom, and it does do that. We do have some limitations based on the computer that we have. We know that, but it does do its job. There's some things that we don't want to do. If you're on let me back up. From a Zoom perspective, we're going to use two different mic systems. We're going to either use these, and that's during forum, which we change within Zoom. You select your microphone that you're going to use within Zoom. If you're on these, on the lift system mics, we found that you do want to use original sound. And the reason for that is really what Terry is talking about. We don't want Zoom audio to do anything. The processor within that system is doing all the audio processing that we want. So when you turn on original sound, what you're effectively doing is disabling any Zoom manipulation of the data. So the only problem with switching mics is if you switch back to these, you got to remember to turn on original sound, and that's easy. Let's just look at this.
Defaults to turning off original sound, right? Yeah.
That's right, Howard. I'm glad you said that. So, for example, if I switch to this for forum and now I'm going to switch back to these, I got to turn it back on because it doesn't stick. That's kind of what I'm saying. Let's see what else in Zoom. Zoom. It's actually easier than it was on the cart because all you got to do is start up the Zoom session over there, and then if we're in forum, you just switch to this mic. It's pretty straightforward.
What's the name of this mic?
This one is I've got it I've got it in here, and along with some pictures of how to turn on original sound and all of that. So that's all in here. Now let me think, what other Zoom questions do you have? Let me just open up.
I probably wasn't paying attention. Why this mic at all?
This, what we found, this mic handles these close in where people are gathered closer together better than the entire room. So during forum, we tend to be more conversational, at least a little bit more conversational. And so this mic is better, we found thus far, is better for that type of application.
Focused in a smaller group.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so that'll be taken away during the meeting.
Yes, that's a great question. That's a great question because it brings up some discussion that is good. So this setting this morning this was agreed on by a committee of one. So I pulled the TV out here mostly because of last forum. Last forum, it was like the online participants weren't even there. It probably felt that way to some degree online. And I felt by bringing this closer, putting it in line with the camera, which we did, is good for forum. Having this out close to where we're speaking is good for forum. At the end of forum, when we say it's over, my plan is to roll it back where it was over here. We won't need this mic anymore. We'll switch over to these. And then for Quakerism 101, we may switch back. We'll do whichever we determine is best. Does that answer your
Yes,
question?
thank you very much.
What other questions?
Maybe we can get some feedback from the other people who've just come on Zoom to see how the sound is working for them.
That would be Larry McAfee. Larry Kelly McAfee, wouldn't it?
Yep.
Larry, I think Tony
Larry's
asked you a
eating
question.
breakfast.
What, what is the question?
How does it sound when we're talking in the forum coming through Zoom?
It's very clear. I can understand all the words as long as you don't mumble like Howard was doing as an experiment. However, it's also very clear that the sound is being processed in such a way that it can be clear.
Yes.
Okay.
It's clear that it's being processed.
It sort of still distorts a bit.
I wouldn't call it distortion. It's more like modulation.
James, which mics are we on right now?
We are currently using the big system.
Okay.
Do you want me to switch it
Yeah.
to the system?
If you don't mind, thanks. So we're going to switch mics back now to the Bluetooth mic. And just again, for you to see, and that should be,
What is that called?
it's the 3303. It's just below there.
And I'm going to switch it to an original sound is off. Okay.
And that's probably okay. So you should have heard a little bit of a change, hopefully. I don't know if it's better or worse, but that's all's involved in changing the microphones.
Any feedback from those on Zoom?
Does that work, Eric and Larry? For you? Can you hear us?
Yeah, we can.
I can hear you.
All right, Larry or Erica, or anybody, can you describe, was there a change to the sound when we switched mics?
Yeah, Terry was a little bit garbled until he said, "Can you hear us?"
Okay, at this normal speaking voice, how does it sound? It may just be because I'm a distance from the Bluetooth mic.
I heard everything you said, Terry, except the last word.
Bluetooth mic.
I mean, one thing that I will say, just to keep in mind, the system won't compensate for mass or mumble. It just won't.
Yeah.
So, this today is about as good a test as we could possibly have done because we're wearing masks in the meeting house again. It's just something to keep in mind, and again, even across the room, I mean, I can hear the difference across the room with the lip system, but we should still be comfortable to tell people that, speak up just a little bit. What's that? Okay. Let's see if I had anything else I wanted to touch bases on. I think that may have been it.
Chip,
Is there a question? Yes.
yeah, I have a question. I was trying to, we have in the past had a remote forum leader sharing a video, and that is controlled, the volume, and that is controlled by the person sharing when they share the video and click on that little box in their Zoom controls to say optimize for sharing video, right?
You're asking a great question, because we are going to want to do that, Erica. And I think what we probably need to do is just to run a test at some point to verify. I think that what we'll find, it will work just fine. I think the volume control that I'm going to call it the presenter, the remote presenter would set in their Zoom settings. I think all that would do, it would limit the output into here, because I still, in here in the room, I still have control over what comes out the speakers with the knob on the wall.
Much about that optimized for sharing video setting. I'm not sure what it does. I really never use it. It might create complications, but it might not.
Let's see. I think we are coming to a close. Are there any other questions? Because we'll try that. I think it's a great question. It goes along with movie night type of question. We've actually, we've been talking about that. Can we use this system to start movie night back? Are there any other questions? Quick, I'm going to have James demonstrate how to turn off the lift and listen system as if he was simulating he was leaving the room. He was the last one out. It's very difficult. He's going to close the door, which he doesn't have to do, but you are going to close the door at some point. Zoom, we're assuming Zoom is already off, but it's in the box. He's completed everything other than closing the box that he needs to do to shut the system down. So he's going to simulate closing the box, and he's going to go over to the volume control system, and he's going to hit the mute button. And he sees the red light, and the system is now turned off. And relative to the system, he can leave. I've talked several times with Tech Savvy about, let's turn it off. What about if we turn it off? Just save energy. And he felt the wear and tear that you get cycling the electronic equipment. It's better to avoid it. Just mute the system. One last thing, final thing. Final two things. First off, James is going to go back into the box, and he's going to point to a red button that's up on the power strip. Yep, and it's illuminated. Everybody see the red button? If we get feedback or anything goes wrong with the system, if you turn that off, it will kill the AC power coming out of the UPS, which is just above it. One down, it's kind of in between. Go up a little.
Narrow band where the plugs are.
Where the green light is. That's it, just above there. That's the UPS, I believe, right? It says UPS.
Yes, it's smart UPS.
So those two things right there, the red button, turn that off. If there's any issue, it's going to kill all the AC power to everything in that box, including the computer. The UPS, where I failed last week, I say failed, I just didn't know. There's a power button on the right side of the UPS near that green light. And don't press it, but if you push the button all the way in, you have to feel it physically click and remove it. It will. I didn't figure that out last week, but that would have stopped the beeping.
And that will affect the Zoom, because the computer will be on.
Anything you touch with the power will.
Don't power down the UPS.
Right.
Yes.
Would it be dangerous for the system to have the AC off?
The AC power.
The AC power off?
It'll just turn it on.
I think it may be confusing AC air conditioning with alternate current
power, AC power.
Electrical
power. Electric power.
Okay, thank you. AC,
Sorry.
DC.
Yes, you're speaking to a former power plant. Sorry about that.
No,
I said it all day.
My limited,
Any other, I think we probably ought to wrap up. Any other questions?
The switch you were just describing on the UPS, that completely powers down the UPS. It doesn't just stop beeping or something?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, that's correct. And I think that's it. So the only last thing I will say this, and I promise this time, is I do want to show a couple more people how to start this up. I think I can be here next week, but there's going to come a point where we need to be independent with more people than just.
I would propose that we have some point people who will make sure that one of us is here, for any particular Sunday.
And we switch back to
various other tasks.
move this out.
The other thing is that we need to incorporate this stuff into the checklist for leaving the meeting house. We need to put it on.
That's great.
Yes, I know.